You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are The Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building, New York State Assembly Speaker, Heastie. Did I say that right?
Yes, you did.
All right. Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, what is a New York State Assembly Speaker?
I knew that was going to be his first question.
Well, I mean, you got to tell. You got to explain what it is.
That's all right. I'll give a quick civics lesson. So in New York State, we have two houses of the legislature. One is the New York State Assembly, and one is the New York State Senate. It's mirrored after Congress, how you have the House of Representatives, and also the U.S. Senate. So New York State's government is mirrored off of the federal government. So I'm the Speaker of the House in the New York State Assembly, the first African-American to hold this position in the history of the state.
Okay, now, what is your job? What do you do? What does that entail?
Well, there's three main jobs that a legislator
for
does.
Your job. That's why he's asking all these questions.
Maybe.
Where you live, and where you live?
Jersey,
I got a residence in Queens, and I got a residence in Jersey.
I'm from the Bronx. All
right, go ahead.
So there's three main jobs that a legislator does. You write and pass laws.
Correct.
You do the budget in the state of New York, which this next year will probably be about $170 billion. And then you do constituent services. You try to solve problems in the community. So now being the speaker, it's almost like you're the team captain. And when you hear the newspapers talk about the three men in the room, they reference the governor, the Speaker of the Assembly, and the majority leader of the New York State Senate. And in this upcoming session, even in the Senate, the other house, the new leader, Andrew Stewart-Cousins, she's African-American as well. So this will be the first time in history that the leaders of both houses will be African-American.
All right. And so were you in the room when Cuomo was talking to, Donald Trump?
No, I wasn't. Matter of fact, I was on the phone with the governor, and he's like, I got to go. It's the White House. So I was actually on the phone with the governor.
Goes, I got to go. It's that asshole.
No, he said, he honestly said it. He says, I got to call you back. It's the White House calling.
What did he say to you about their conversation?
He said they really just kept it about the infrastructure, that he reminded the president that, when he was in New York, it was a commitment that was made by the Obama administration to fund the infrastructure projects here. And he said he just made that point to him.
Do you think that there's such a thing as a government that's not corrupt in some way?
I think that in every industry you're going to have bad apples. But I believe that most elected officials actually get elected to do the right thing. But like I said, in every profession, you have bad doctors, bad lawyers, bad police. But it's just that in the nature of this business, and now with the media and social media, that when somebody gets in trouble, it's much more attractive when you see bad news about an elected official than something that we do well.
What do you think about gun control in New York?
I hate guns. I hate what I see about guns, and we actually have very restrictive gun laws.
We sure do.
In the state, probably the most restrictive in the state. But the problem that we have is, and fixing the gun laws is something we have to do nationally, because every illegal gun started out legal somewhere. And so you have a lot of states where people go and they legally go and buy guns, and then they end up here. I'm in New York, but we are very, very strict. I think if you're actually caught in New York State with the gun, right, it's 3 years, 3.5.
That's why Lil Wayne doesn't like coming to New York.
Right.
He's not playing with y'all.
Now the question, you said you hate guns. Why do you hate guns?
Because I see when we were growing up, when people had arguments, it's like, you had a fight you made up. There's no making up after after there's gunplay. And I've known of friends who just recently, a good friend of mine was killed across the street from my office. So the results of what I see from guns is just a big problem. And everyone will argue it's the Second Amendment. But when the Second Amendment was written, we were worried about the British are coming. The British aren't coming, they're our friends. So this idea that everybody has to have a gun, there's no reason to have an assault weapon. Guns that can let out 60 bullets in a minute,
right?
It just does too much damage.
And I agree with that.
And if you compare the United States to other countries, just look and see the other industrialized countries. They have less than 100 murders by guns in a given year. And we have hundreds every single day here in this country.
I do feel like assault rifles and assault weapons are not needed unless it's military, but I also feel like people do need to protect themselves, especially when there's so many illegal guns. There's a lot of people that get arrested and go to jail for trying to protect themselves, which I think is kind of that slippery slope that we have, and especially with a lot of states where you can carry.
Well, people who have businesses, and I'll give you an example. I had a person who actually had a barbershop in my area. He had applied to get a gun license, and he was denied.
Very
He owned a
difficult,
barbershop, and he was robbed a few times. He ended up getting arrested with the possession of a gun. I actually spoke up for him because I believe that that's an instance. You have a business and there's cash and money like that. That's very understandable to have that. But I just think the more guns that we have, the more tragedies that are going to happen. These horrific tragedies where people are walking onto college campuses, schools. You know what happened up there in Connecticut. It's just, and one of the things we've tried to do here in New York is to make sure that people who may have some mental health issues, that there's an ability to take guns away from people who have mental health issues.
What about looking at people's social media and seeing the things that they're posting and YouTube videos and all of that? You think that's something that should be done before determining whether or not somebody should be able to get a permit for a gun?
I think a background check or anything that I think can give law enforcement pause to say that maybe this person shouldn't have a gun, I'm all for that. Listen, I don't like guns. I think in a very limited sense, people should have guns if you have a business or if you're in law enforcement. But I think in general, whatever we can do to lessen the number of guns on the street, I think are good for us, particularly in the inner city, because like I said, all of these illegal guns started out legal somewhere.
Right. Yeah. Now I agree with you as far as the assault rifle. I don't think assault rifles, but I think it's somebody who's been shot at several times. And not being able to protect myself, because if I do protect myself, I go to jail for 2-3 years for.
But those guns that were probably being used to have shot at you,
they didn't have those.
Right. If they didn't have those, because again, they were an illegal gun.
Right.
It is extremely difficult, particularly here in the city. The city is even more restrictive than the rest of the state.
Yeah, no.
You have to get absolute sign off from the New York City Police Commissioner if you're a resident of the city of New York, if you have a business in the city of New York, to get a license. And it is a very, very, very difficult thing.
Believe me, I know. I'm going through it right now. Now let's talk about marijuana a little bit. Now, what are your thoughts on marijuana? It seems like they're legalizing it in so many different states.
Oh, we were just smoking right out here.
I don't know what you're
I'm
talking
kidding,
about.
I'm kidding.
Is that what I smell?
It's illegal in New York State to smoke marijuana. But now, what do you think about legalizing marijuana?
I do believe that at some point we are going to legalize marijuana. And I think that there's two things. We can't just instantly blink and have marijuana legal. And when this first came up last year, one of the things I mentioned is, well, if this is going to happen, we're going to have to fix the criminal justice side of this, where many people, particularly people of color, have gone to jail,
We have to
have
expunge
records,
some people's
right?
records.
Expunge records that you can't just say, all right, it's good for everybody to have it. That, and you also have to look at the economic development side, particularly if the African American and Latino communities have been the ones that have been most harshly hurt by the criminal justice aspect of that. When we do put this out there, there should be
benefit.
opportunities for those two communities to benefit from the economics.
How do you
almost
make
make it
that? How do you make
impossible
something
to
like
do
that
that.
happen?
Well, there'll be a licensing procedure, and then there's some difficulties because there's still, it's still federally illegal. So it'll be difficult to raise capital. You can't go get a loan to say I want to have a marijuana license. But we may have to become creative to make sure that people of color could have the capital to apply for these licenses.
That's very difficult too. They want you to have an extreme amount of money, an extreme amount of assets. There's so many there's so many hoops that they want you to do. That
Well,
you
we
can
may
tell
have to
it's
get
not-
some rich people like you and Angela to help some of these black
That's
companies.
envy. Envy's worth $6 million.
I'm definitely not.
I saw it when I Googled it.
I'm probably worth about $10, but I've been trying that too, and that's very, very difficult as well.
No, but I'm just saying. But it really may take some of the people in the black community who have the means to help out, because we're not going to be able to. You're not going to be able to get a loan from a
Yeah,
bank.
though, you know, it should, like you said, since we consume a lot of the marijuana and weed, we should be able to make money off of it. And telling somebody they have to have a net worth of $10 million, that's not right.
But that's why I said we're going to have to get creative, because that's always a barrier. Money, particularly to communities of color, is always a barrier, and that's why I said it'll be difficult for me as the Speaker of the House, and that's why sometimes it's good to have somebody like me, and now you'll have Andrea in the room where we can absolutely say, well, we can't do this unless there's some real opportunities for people of color to kind of make up for what has happened. We've been hardest hit. People can't get a job because they have a marijuana arrest for possession and things like that. So those things have to be fixed before I would ever sign off on having marijuana legalized in the state.
Now, I know you travel a lot, and we go to different cities, different states, different countries, and everywhere seems to be so clean. But New York just seems so damn dirty. Like, why is New York so
Subway system's
dirty?
all messed up.
Everything is just dirty in New York. And I'm like,
Envy hasn't been on the train, but he's read about it.
No, I've been on train, but I just came back from Toronto, and Toronto was just so clean. Like, you could lick off the floor. You lick off
the floor?
I'm just joking. But if you lick off New York, you're going to die of something.
I think it's the volume of people in such a small.
It's very congested.
Right,
Even
it's so
LA
many
is
people.
cleaner. LA is cleaner.
But they still don't have the, on any given day, you have, I think, 3 or 4 million people are actually here on the island of Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really kind of what leads to it. And even on the subway system, remember, this is a system that was built, in the 1800s. I'm sure that might not have been the primary thing. A lot of the track fires happen because people throw trash. And I just feel like people should just have more of an awareness. Like, this is where you live. This is where you got to go. And you shouldn't be looking to throw litter and things like that on the street. I've said that to people. I remember I was walking down the street and these four young girls, and it was around a building, very nice. And this was actually in the Bronx. And one of the girls just threw a piece of paper over the fence in there. And I said, why would you do something like that? And she just looked at me, she was like, because I felt like it. So I just think like we kind of need right. She was young, but we need that kind of attitude.
Is that where the conversation ended, or?
Well, I mean, I just shook my head. One of her friends.
He ain't want to smoke with that young girl.
Thank God you didn't have a gun.
No, and it's just like no, and I don't want
She
somebody's
never done.
parent coming back saying why you trying to chastise my child. But I just think it's a real attitude that we should have more pride in the fact that we live here in the city. It's our city, and we should want it. We should want it clean. But I really think it's just the volume of people that we have.
You know what I think too? I think a lot of times with ownership, I think if we start owning back a lot of our properties, then we'll take more pride in it.
Yep.
I think a lot of people look at it
that's
go,
a real issue that we have here, and that's about housing. Like, how is it that we see how Brooklyn's gentrified, Bronx
It's
is
coming.
Right
coming.
now, right? So how can we make sure that people can actually afford to live here? Because I hear so many stories about people who have to leave the city, who have to live really far out. It's such an inconvenience to people. What can we do about the housing crisis that we have? People are trying to actually get these housing lotteries so that they can get some affordable housing, but it's like a rarity for you to even get that. That's like a 1 in a million shot.
Well, next year, actually, the rent regulations expires, and for far too long, with the Senate being held in Republican hands, it was really difficult to negotiate laws that could help keep apartments affordable. But even though I think we will do that for sure, we will address the rent regulations. I do think we have to do something to promote home ownership. When you have home ownership, I think it can handle the issues more of gentrification. So we used to have we had the Mitchell-Lama programs that allow people to own a co-op and it's yours. But we're only talking about affordable housing in terms of rentals, it makes it that much easier for a community to change. It's so easy at the end of your lease to just pack up and leave. It's not yours. You're still under the rules of the landlord. But I do think when we're really going to talk about having the city to be more affordable, we have to allow for people, even low income, to have the ability to own, and there's that sense of pride.
We got to give them loans. We got to be able to.
Right, it's a loan. You can. There's programs that we have.
But you don't want them to also get a loan that they can't afford. You see how that goes, and then they end up going into foreclosure.
Well, when you have these, there's even one being built in my area now where it's low income condos, where when the government subsidizes the programs, because that's really where the cost and the rent comes in, is what was the formula that actually built the building that people were going to be in. So if the government can help subsidize some of the building of the building, and then you come up with the programs that we fund in the state budget that helps the neighborhood groups identify different types of programs that people can use to apply. There's programs that will help people with for the down payment or the closing costs and things like that. But I also think it's an attitude adjustment, because sometimes people are just resistant to change. They're comfortable paying rent. Yeah. You have to tell people even though Trump and the Republicans tried to kill it, there is a financial benefit to home ownership. You get to deduct the mortgage interest on your taxes. You pay $1,000 a month in rent, you have no tax deduction. You pay $1,000 a month mortgage, the interest that you're paying on the mortgage is tax deductible. So I think we have to educate people that there's a financial benefit of a tax shelter when you have home ownership as well.
Absolutely.
Now, is Governor Cuomo considering possibly running for president in 2020?
He says he's not. I think that if you look at the resumes of a lot of the governors, I think the things that we've been able to do, even with a Republican Senate, I think he has a good resume. He says he has not. But I do know in this business, I've had many elected officials say one thing to me, and then all of a sudden they change their mind.
He has a great last name.
So right, he has a good last name, and we've done some groundbreaking things here. And we're the first state to $15 an hour minimum wage. I suggested it. He first said he's not sure, but then he thought it was a great idea, so we did that. We had paid family leave. We're the first state, I believe, or one of the first states to do marriage equality. So I would think that he would have a pretty good resume to put out there. And I would say this, in all of our meetings, I think he would have a good attitude that could deal with a Donald Trump.
See, I like Cuomo. There's other people that I like, but I like Cuomo because he's a New Yorker, and I think he will sting Trump right back. I think he'll play that dirty game.
He said they had a good meeting and that Trump was very knowledgeable.
Cuomo still don't fuck with him like that, though. He still don't mess with him like that. He just said that for the press, but Cuomo's
no, we need some funding. The guy is still president, and again, this the project that the governor went down to speak about it deals with transportation between New York and New Jersey.
That they said they were going to help, and then
that's right. The Obama administration said yes. He took it away. So
he was like surprised. He was like, "Damn, Donald Trump knew some things about."
Well, I think some of us are shocked at a lot of things about Donald Trump.
What about immigration here? Because I know you guys are
right. Immigration is really a federal issue, but we will try as best as we can. Now, particularly, I think with the Democratic Senate to try to be helpful to protecting immigrants, not making it easy for these ICE agents to come in and rip people and rip families apart. I think it's heartbreaking. But we will go up to the limits that we can do on a state level because the actual issue of immigration is still a federal issue.
All right.
We appreciate you for joining us and putting us on to some of these game.
And we don't have voter suppression issues here in New York, do we?
No, I wouldn't say we have I don't think we have voter suppression issues. It's a huge system that has to be managed. Just like the previous election day, there was issues with the scanners. They were breaking down all over the place. They were raining. I think for the most part, every bureaucracy is going to have its issues, and I'm sure the Board of Elections can do things more efficiently. But I don't believe we have voter suppression issues here in New York State.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate you.
Do you have
I've been telling
card?
Carr to come up here for the longest.
Yeah. Do you have his card or?
That's
PDA
like the
card
person.
Or
You know what it
shield
is?
Or something that way, if we get pulled over, we can call him directly.
And can't you call your dad, who's a cop?
Yeah, I can.
So what you need to call Carl for? He has better things to do than worry about you getting pulled over.
My dad don't be answering for me sometimes now.
Carl's definitely not answering for you. I can promise you that.
Now I was gonna say Angela's that person that says, "Yeah, you should always come by my house, and you always wait for the invite." So thank you for finally inviting me after us being friends for all these years. I appreciate you.
We've known each other for how many years?
I think we met in 1996. Do you remember where it was?
1996.
A Jay-Z party.
Nope, that's not where we first met.
I was 4 in
We first met at
1996.
Grant's Tomb. Remember we used to the Wednesdays at Grant's Tomb. That's when we first
that's
met.
a long time ago.
Grant's Tomb.
Wow.
And then that's when we first really started talking when we met
Oh, so
when we
he tried
started
to holler.
Jay-Z.
If he was at Grant's Tomb, he tried to holler. Now, for all you younger kids out there that don't know what Grant's Tomb is,
No.
it's like it was the spot where you go, you got your
Listen
little
to
car.
jazz.
Back in the day,
Yeah.
the cars were like a Jetta or Honda, like those were
Envy,
the popping cars.
it was for jazz. It wasn't for you
no
to be in a car.
damn jazz. Nobody cared about the jazz.
Right?
No, people would go from Grant's Tomb and then they would go on to 125th Street.
Yeah.
So. But I actually tell you the first things when I first saw Angela, I thought she was like 14 or 15.
I was.
probably was.
No, you weren't. No, you weren't.
probably was.
But then when I saw you at the Jay-Z party, I was like, oh, well, you got to be 21 to get in. But no, it's like me and my friend
You
Jason.
actually didn't have to be 21 to get into parties back then.
Back
really.
then, but we
I definitely was in parties at 14, 15.
Your friends and me and my friend Jason, we just was all chilling, having a good time out there. And then I saw you a couple of months later, and then ever since then we've been really good friends.
You ain't trying to holler at you?
We good friends. We're good friends.
Wait, what you ain't like about
Damn,
you?
baby, stop trying to make it awkward.
All right, there you have it.
I was only 14.
Oh, all
no,
right.
I'm playing.
Yeah,
Go
don't say
ahead,
that.
Steve. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.